Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be finalising our crafting system by getting it in the game and hooking it up to our inventory and allowing us to actually craft some items. Now we're going to need to do two little things first before we really start kind of hammering out some interesting code things. Very first one is if we go to our crafting UI and we go into our script, we're going to need to add a variable here for the player's inventory because this is going to need access or at least knowledge of the player's inventory. So let's just go var player underscore inventory of type. We'll go inventory component, so we can just flat give it the inventory component. That way it can adjust the player's inventory as well. And I'll set it equal to null. We'll hit Control S and save. Now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down a little bit. Let's go down to just above clean material window here. Actually, no, let's do it. Let's do it up here, just below ready. We are just going to go create a new function for setting up the player's inventory. And all that really is just a setter function, right? So we just want set underscore player underscore inventory. It's going to need to receive a new underscore inventory of type inventory component, and it will return void. And yeah, what we want to do in here is just go player inventory is equal to the new inventory, not the H new inventory, the new inventory. Gotta love typos, especially when you don't realize them. They really, really do damage when you don't realize them. But with the player inventory set up, let's go back to our world scene, go to our UI container script here, which it just went to automatically. Great. Now what we're going to want to do is actually start, adding a button to allow us to open up our inventory whilst we're in the game. But for that, we're going to need to use our crafting bench, because our crafting bench, if we remember correctly, in the last series or last episode, we created a little boolean here just to say, hey, is this thing interactable or is it not? So let's give us access via an onReady variable to the crafting bench. Now this is very much a placeholder kind of deal for just how I wanted to set up a crafting bench for this one specific place. Now, if you want to have multiple crafting benches doing multiple different things, we will have to do something a little bit different about that. But for now, this is what I'm going to do, where I just create an onReady variable for the crafting bench. Now I go to my project settings, and input map, because I'm going to need a key to actually do this, right? So I'm going to just call this open underscore crafting underscore bench. Now I will say open crafting UI. There we go. Click the add button. I'm going to use the E key as my crafting button. And now I'm just going to do another check under unhandled input here, where I just go if the input dot is action just pressed open crafting UI, I'm going to want to do a couple of things. The first thing that I'm going to want to do here, check if the crafting bench, so let's go if crafting bench dot is interactable. Now, I've had some comments about this in the past where, if you go sort of equal to true like this, where you're doing a operand for checking or comparing if it is equal to true or not, you don't actually need to do that. You can just go if is interactable and it will kind of assume if it's true. But I like to be as obvious as I possibly can be with this, even if it is unnecessary. At least this way you can kind of read and see what I'm doing better. So, if it is interactable, what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to want to pull up the crafting UI, right? So I'm going to go, and well, that also means I'm going to need to add the crafting UI to the UI container. So let's go to our UI container, Control-Shift-A, grab our crafting UI, we'll add that. I'm going to hide it for now. I'm going to create a onReady variable using a unique name for this as well. So now what I can do here is set up the inventory before we do anything with it, right? So let's go crafting UI dot set player inventory, and we want to pass through the player dot inventory component. That way the UI now has access to the inventory component. Now you'll notice here that I'm refreshing this. Every time I press the button and the crafting bench is in an interactable state, I'm going to be giving it a new version of the inventory, and that's just to keep the inventory updated as well. Not entirely necessary, but something I kind of like doing. Now we need to figure out, the visibility stuff. So let's first, right, one thing that I like to do is make sure the inventory, if the inventory is open, I want to make that hidden. So I'm going to grab the inventory first in this. I'm going to go inventory UI, dot visible. I'm going to check if this is equal to true. So if the inventory is open, I'm going to want to grab the inventory UI and use dot hide. That way the inventory UI is now hidden. Now it's just sorting out the crafting UI showing, right? So we want to go if crafting UI dot visible is equal to false. We want to set the crafting UI visible. So to do that, we're just going to write crafting UI dot show. Now we can do a little else statement to make it a toggle, right? So we just do the opposite. We go crafting UI dot hide. Now outside of the is interactable statement as an else statement, I'm actually going to do one more crafting UI dot hide to make sure that the crafting UI can actually be hidden, even if we're not in an interactable state with the crafting bench. So hit Control S and save. Let's hit play and just go and make sure that this actually works, right? Let's walk up to the crafting bench. Let's press I. We have nothing in our inventory. Let's go and grab some things, put them in our inventory. Now I'm going to hit close on my inventory, reopen it. That's interesting. Going to have to figure that out in a minute. Now I'm going to open it, and ta-da, it opens up our inventory, which is auto-populating with all of our stuff, right? Now, new issue. Crafting button does nothing, and the only way of exiting this menu is by pressing E again. Even if I walk away, all I can do is press E. So I'm going to very quickly add a little cross button up here for the crafting UI. Now, because of how we set this up, this is actually really, really simple. The first HBox container that we have here, I'm going to use Control-Shift-A. I'm going to add a button. Not Control-Shift-A, Control-A. I'm going to add a button. That button is going to just have a little X on it. Now I'm going to go to the anchoring presets or the alignment presets here, and I'm going to align it with, or shrink begin here, so the first one, so align at the very top. Now I'm going to come down into the theme fonts, or font sizes, sorry, and I'm going to change the font size to 24. Now I'm going to go to the layout and grab a 24 in the Y, and we'll have this written down somewhere. There we go. 42. And that will give us a nice chunky X button. Let's go and very quickly hook up the X button as well. So let's go into our crafting UI script, click on the button. I'm going to rename this to the exit button. Grab node, click button down, click connect, so it connects to our crafting UI script. Now all I'm going to do here is just write hide, because that button should only be visible if it's visible, right? So let's go and test this one more time. So walk over to the anvil, click open, our button's in the top right corner, and it's not doing anything. Why is it not doing anything? So it's not doing anything because I managed to add a button and then click the wrong button. This is the issue with naming conventions. So the button that I have named the X button is actually the craft button. I'm going to go ahead here and make sure the button down is disabled. Go to close it out. Rename the other button to the craft button, or exit button. I will get this right. Now I'm going to connect button down on this, and then hide. There we go. Let's go click play and give it a little test. Run over, open it, and there you go. Now it closes. Perfect. So, with that set up and our actual hiding and our inventory being set to the crafting UI, so this is now getting an inventory component for us to mess around with. We're now going to need one more new variable. We're going to need a variable for the selected underscore recipe. Now this is something that I did add in the previous video, but ended up removing because my brain didn't really think it was necessary, and then I realized why it's necessary. Set that equal to null. There we go. So this is going to be a selected recipe of item recipe, set it equal to null. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come down to where we select the recipe. So where are we selecting the recipe? We are selecting the recipe here in on tree cell selected. So let's very quickly change the selected recipe to equal the recipe in the recipe array here. Now, if we remember correctly, for recipe and recipe array is looping over every single recipe until it finds the recipe that matches the name of the cell it is attached to. If it is the correct recipe and the correct name, it will then return out and populate our board and show us the materials. But it also means we can just add the recipe to this, which is really cool. So now we have our selected inventory. Let's go back up to our set player inventory, because the next thing I want to do is a little bit of a quality of life thing. Now, you don't have to do this as a little bonus thing. I kind of like it. When we actually set our inventory, what I want to do is I want to basically build the tree back out, but have it auto set to whatever the first recipe in the array is. That way it's not just let me show this off. That way it's not just this screen, because if it's just this screen, that's going to look weird and we don't really want that for a game. So I want to auto set it to health potion. So what we're going to do here is, now simply we can just call build recipe material window, and we can just pass through whichever recipe we want to do, right, inside the recipe array. So we can just go recipe array 0. Like that. Now, what this will do is just set it to the health potion. What I want to actually do here is an if statement. I want to go if the selected recipe is equal to null. Then I want to build the recipe material window using the recipe array 0. So whichever is the first thing indexed in that array. Now, on the else statement here, basically if selected recipe doesn't equal null. Now, this is the bonus thing. You don't need to do this. What I want is so it will remember what the previously selected thing is, even after you've walked away. So, like after you've closed the menu and walked away, I want it to be able to repopulate with the correct or previously listed recipe. So to do that, all we do is once again call build the recipe material window, and we just pass through the selected recipe. Now, if I hit Control S and save, we play the game and we go in, it should open up immediately to the health potion. Now, if I change this to, say, the mana potion, or we'll go stamina potion, and I walk away and I come back, automatically to the stamina potion again. Let's try one more time with the mana potion, come back, mana potion. Perfect. So it's now remembering what recipe we left it on, and it's auto-populating the correct recipe, so it's not just some random placeholder stuff. So what's the next thing that we've got to do? Well, the next thing we're going to want to do is actually check if the recipe is craftable, because I want it so the button that we're going to be using to craft it, send the signal that will craft the actual item, I want to disable that button if the recipe is not craftable. So let's come down below our building of things. Let's go down to just above cleaning our material window here. We're going to write a new function for check recipe underscore craftable. Now this is going to be a void return type, and we're going to open this up, and the very first thing we're going to do, because when we created our player inventory, we created a .get contents function. I don't want to have to write out .get contents or get inventory contents repeatedly, so I'm going to create a new variable. I'm just going to call this player underscore inventory underscore contents, which is, it's a little bit shorter than that, so it's not entirely necessary, but it saves a small amount of time and my sanity. So we're going to set that as a dictionary and set it equal to the player inventory dot get inventory contents. So now we have this specific dictionary for just the player's inventory contents. Now, what we want to do is we're going to do an if check. We're going to go if the player inventory contents dot, and this is so this is all done with dictionaries, which I found another way of doing inventories with arrays, which is a little bit simpler, but I'm sticking with dictionaries because I'm a bit stubborn. So dictionaries have a really, really unique function here, and it is called has all, which means if I have an array of keys, I can just see if the inventory, well, in this instance, the player inventory has all of the same keys as, say, the recipes materials, because they are the same name, or same, unique reference, basically. Now, all I have to do for this is just pass through the recipe material dictionary dot keys. Why? Because keys returns an array of keys. Now, I'm going to do a print statement to kind of show this off a little bit. I'm going to say has keys, and then I'm going to write a quick else here for print doesn't have keys. Now I'm going to hit Control S and save, and we are going to figure out where we want to actually put this, checking if the recipe is craftable. I think the very first place we're going to want to put this is actually when we build out the recipe material window here. We're going to do it after our for loop, so let's just go check recipe craftable here. Hit Control S and save. Now I should be able to just open up the game, walk over, and you'll see here that we just don't have the keys, right? Perfect. So we now know that we don't have the keys for pretty much any of these recipes. So let's go and grab the mana potion here, because that will allow us to make the stamina potion. Oh, look at that. We now have the keys for the stamina potion, so we now know we at least have the material for it, but we don't know how many of those materials we have. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit more. I'll leave the has keys in there so we know if it has the keys. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go and do a little for loop inside of this. We're going to go for key, not jet, for key in the recipe material dictionary. Now we want to check if the player inventory contents, and we'll use the key so we'll match the actual keys correctly, is less than. So what we're actually doing here is we're checking if we have, like, basically if the value attached to those keys is less than a certain amount. So if the value behind whatever key we are looking at is less than the recipe material dictionary, pass through the key again. This is basically just going to say that, you know, they match or don't match. In this instance, if the two values don't match, but the keys do and the two values don't, we need to say, hey, let's go and disable our button, right? We're going to disable our craft button, which I need to make sure we have a on ready for. So let's go and create a unique name reference to the craft button here. Scroll back down. Get a little bit lost. There we go. We want to grab our craft button and we want to go .set_disabled. We'll set that equal to true. Now you'll notice that I didn't get any autocomplete for set disabled, but it does actually have a set disabled setter here, which is weird. I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know why that's a thing. But you know, if we don't actually have the materials amount we want to then return out, I'm going to add another little print statement before this for not enough materials. So now we're going to say, okay, we have the keys, but we don't have the amount of materials we need. Yes, so now we're just going to check if it works again, and I'm going to pick up one of each potion here to make sure we have all three. I'm going to click this, and as you can see here, immediately the second it auto-loaded to the health potion, it said that we have the keys, but we don't have the materials, because we have one green potion, but we don't have two blue. Same for the mana potion, and of course, same for the stamina potion, but in this case, it just says has keys, because we can craft it. But, of course, the crafting button is disabled, so we can't do anything with that yet. Now all we're going to do is add a little else statement here, and we're going to basically just reset that craft button. We're going to go craft button dot set_disabled, and we'll set that equal to false, so it's no longer disabled. And then we will write one more print statement for can craft. So in all of this, basically what we've done here is just checked if we have the correct amount of materials and values for the materials. So let's go and give it one more try. I'm going to grab one blue potion here. Click this. As you can see, it just says we don't have the keys, even though we clearly do have a blue potion. Why is that happening? Well, it is returning out of this statement the second it finds a material we don't have, which is perfect, because it should mean that the crafting button stays disabled, which in this instance, it's not. Now, why is it not? It's just because, you know, once again, it's coming up and it's saying we don't have the keys, but it's not actually going into the loop properly and setting it as disabled. So let's go and add one more craft button, .set_disabled here. We'll set this equal to true. Hit Control F or Control S and save. hit play, and just make sure that that's working. Grab the blue potion. We don't have the keys, we can't craft. We don't have the keys, we can't craft. We do have the keys, we can craft. Perfect, so now we are controlling whether the player can and cannot actually press the craft button, which is really good. We don't want to give them like that false sense of, oh, I can craft this. Just disabling the button like that really visually shows that you just don't have the materials for it. So now we've checked if the craftable recipe is a thing inside the build recipe material window. The next thing we want to do is actually come down to our craft button and add the on button down signal. In here, we really need to just do a really simple thing. One, I'm going to grab the player inventory contents again and just throw that into here. Because once again, I just don't want to sit here and write out player inventory contents dot get inventory contents repeatedly. Now all I have to do is do for the recipe, we'll say for recipe underscore material inside the recipe material dictionary, because we now want to actually craft it, right? We know we have buttons enabled, we now have the ability to craft the item, we now need to go ahead and actually remove those materials from the recipe. So to do that, we're just going to grab the materials inside the actual material list we have, and we are going to need to create a remove function. So I'm going to write a quick comment, create remove function, and then after that for loop, we're going to want to go player inventory dot add item, and we are going to want to add, what are we going to want to add? Well, this is why we have selected recipe, because now we know exactly what recipe we need to do, and we need to just use the final item, so we can just pass that through. And now as a final check here, we can just go check underscore if the recipe is craftable after we've done this, because, you know, we're now removing items from the, right past there, we're now removing items from the inventory, so we need to make sure that our inventory gets updated and our items get rechecked. Hit Control S and save. I'm going to go and press play, and if I come and grab a mana potion here, and I open up my inventory, you can see we have one mana potion. Let's go over. We have the keys and we can craft it. Let's hit craft. As you can see, we've managed to craft one potion. Why only one potion after all of those clicks? Well, this is actually something that stumped me a little bit. Very, very stupidly. My items here for resources, my stamina potion, the one that's the easiest to make, has an item stack size of 1. So make sure you check your stack sizes if you have issues like this. I'm going to set this to 10. We're going to go and try this one more time. Grab one mana potion, stamina potion, craft, 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 craft. And if I press I, you can now see I have 10 stamina potions, but we didn't remove the mana potion, right? That means we need to go and create the remove function. Now, we have an add function inside the actual player inventory, so we're going to go and create a remove function in there. Now, easy way of getting to your inventory, you just saw me do it there for a second. If you hold down Control and you click on the function that comes from the inventory system, it'll take you straight to your component for it. Now, just below add item, I'm going to write a func remove item function. And funny enough, the remove item function is extremely simple. We don't have to do a lot of this stuff. We can just pass through two things. We need the item of type item data and the amount of type integer. Void return type as usual. Now all we've got to do is we can just check. We need to check if the inventory contents of that item is greater than the amount. If it is, we can just inventory contents, grab the item, and then set it equal or minus equals the amount. So we'll do the else statement really quickly, which is very simple. We're just going to, erase the item from the inventory constant. So dot erase and pass through the item. Now I'm going to really quickly explain this and why we're not doing a certain check. So all this is doing is we're checking if the value that is in our inventory for behind the specific key, which is the referenced item. So referenced item in this case will be a stamina potion. That's what we're passing through. And the amount that we're passing through, so i.e. we are removing 2 of them, Yeah, we are removing 2 of them in this instance, right? So we want to craft a mana potion. We are removing 2 stamina potions to do that. We want to make sure that the amount that we have inside the inventory is greater than the amount we are passing through. If it is, we can then use minus equals amount. Now, the issue with this comes if we don't have that, right? We want to make sure if we don't have that, it just gets removed from the inventory in general, so we can just erase the item. This will always leave us with at least 1 item in the inventory, or the inventory removing the item entirely, which is really, really useful. And now, if I hit Ctrl S and save, that's it. That's all we need to do to create our removal function. So let's go back to the crafting UI, and let's just call that in here. So player inventory dot remove item. What do we want to remove? Well, we want to remove the selected recipe dot. Sorry, no, we want to remove the recipe material. And now we're going to call the recipe material dictionary and pass through the recipe material as the key, like so. So what this is going to do is it's going to remove the recipe material itself, or pass that through, and then it's going to pass through the key or the value behind that. So we're passing through the key and value at the same time. Now I can remove the pass function there, and that's it. That's pretty much it. Let's go and open the inventory up in here. Let's go grab a bunch of potions. Make sure all of this is functioning, run over, click the health potion, and before I do that, let's open up the inventory. 443. Let's click the health potion and remove. So this should remove 1 green potion and 2 blue. Oh, we can now no longer craft the health potion. That is because we only have 1 blue and 3 green. But of course it added a new health potion. So let's go down to the mana potions. We'll remove 3 reds and 2 greens. 3 reds gone, 2 greens gone. And let's finally, make sure what we can and cannot craft here. So I can craft another health potion. Okay. We now only have 3 health potions left, and that's it. We can't craft anymore. That's because the crafting recipes aren't actually balanced, and they're giving back weird amounts of things, which is entirely fine. When you actually do this yourself with your own recipes, I'm sure you'll know exactly what you need, so it doesn't return an odd amount of items. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the crafting system entirely hooked up and ready to go. Now, there will be a bonus video coming out for crafting systems because I was tinkering over the last week and I figured out a much better way of doing this, which will allow you to, 1, not have to do a bunch of dictionary things, and 2, allow you to craft as many items at the same time with, and this is the best part, different varying qualities. So if you pass through certain types of items, it'll give you the item you want of a quality type, which is quite interesting and something that a viewer and Discord member came up with. Speaking of, if you need any help, make sure you either leave a comment or please come down to the Discord where your comments and questions will be answered very, very quickly, like much faster. Now, don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials, and as always, have a good day and a great game dev journey, and I'll see you next time.